Today is a great day for a number of different reasons. It's been a while since I felt this good. There's happiness, there's relaxation, and ironically, it comes from moving through the life-threatening fear of conflict. Now, when you're 5 years old and you're being hit, you don't like it. It's normal to fight back, to scream, to resist. But when that resistance is met with greater violence or the collapse of the parent. So there's two things that are terrifying to a child in a dependent relationship with a parent or an authority figure. The first is being killed by the law of superior mass. The child is small. The grown-up is a giant by comparison. The child is dependent. The grown-up is independent. So the grown-up can kill the child, can torment them, can humiliate them, can torture them physically. They can kill the child. The other thing that the child can't deal with is collapse. If you're in a dependent relationship and your mother bursts into tears and then falls to the floor and says, "I'm gonna die, the world's gonna end, just don't give me such a hard time." The child is struck by the fragility of this person they're depending on. In other words, if my life depends on someone that falls apart because a 5-year-old says something, I'm not really safe. And in order to avoid that frightening reality, the child may just stop protesting, may go along with the humiliation, the shame, the abuse, just to get by without having it thrust into their face that they're depending on someone who is undependable. So this is a really important, either of these things are problematic, the abuse or the collapse. So when I experienced the increased rage, but also some of the helplessness and just fear and panic in my parents through resisting, I kind of toned it down. I did a number of things. I became a bit of the fool because fools aren't threatening. I did this with my teacher as well when he had a meltdown, because in 6th grade, I asked him a couple of questions. He didn't know the answers, and he didn't know how to deal with that. And so he just, flew into a rage. And I learned basically that he felt safer if nobody revealed his ignorance. And so I played the clown there as well, rather than learning much. And I also played kind of the confidant role. Since my parents had difficult times dealing with their feelings, particularly my father, just kind of trying to see things from his point of view and be his confidant. But beneath all that, there's a tremendous amount of fear and a tremendous amount of pain. Now that kind of confidant, enabling dynamic, playing the fool where necessary so that other people can feel important and not feel threatened, became a default. But a number of things, in recent years have occurred that were so sick, that were so, just outrageous, being sexually propositioned by a therapist under the influence of psychedelics, and then being blamed for it. and then not being given a refund, even after it's just, what do you do with that? Or a landlord who doesn't take care of any of their jobs, increasing a pattern of tenant harassment. For what? I look at the email exchanges and it's like, this person is just trying to be a bully for some reason, and then, there's a number of these things have come to a head, and for a couple of years, I just felt like I was going to die. Every time I tried to assert a boundary and, request reasonable treatment, and someone didn't want to do it, it just felt like I was going to die. And it's that feeling of terror and of death has been one of the hardest things, to just look at, to be in my body and feel that feeling. It's been devastating. And the consequence of being unable to assert, to healthily and aggressively hold a boundary and say, here and no further. This isn't yours. This isn't legal. Here and no further. This is the law. These are my boundaries. Respect them. Now, most people are reasonable, and so I have not had to confront what happens when someone just has absolutely no sense of healthy boundaries or healthy law. And it's inconceivable what goes on here, but given that it does, I tried to kind of do the normal rationalizing and this and that and the other. It didn't work. And that brought up that panic. Not that I could assert my boundaries, but what am I going to do because I can't? If I assert my boundaries, I will enrage my abuser even more. They will attack me more vigorously. And I can't deal with that. That's the 5-year-old. That's the 3-year-old who never got support. No therapist, no neighbor, both parents were doing the abuse. It was just too much to deal with. So, in recent times, I've been stepping up the stage of pushing boundaries, being willing to sue a landlord that's, in engagement with tenant harassment, and being willing to move and sue the landlord, for that process. And a neighbor throwing garbage on my land, having a failed retaining wall, being rude, not doing what he says, failing to respond to email. Okay, sue the neighbor. There's a process that it has involved facing death, making these videos. There's a certain sense of conflict because my abuser does not want me to make these videos. Every time I've confronted a boundary, this feeling that I'm going to die comes up. And sometimes I can't sleep, for days. But today, I think in a certain way, I turned a corner, not being willing to back down and holding a boundary. Again, I turned a corner. And it just feels really good because I'm no longer acting out of fear primarily, but out of a sense of this is a healthy boundary, and so I'm going to hold it. And if you don't like it, we can fight about it, but I'm going to win. Because the boundaries I'm holding are legal boundaries. You know, I didn't give my neighbor the right to come onto my land and cut my trees without permission. I'm not talking about, just doing something that I want. We're talking about just basic respect of boundaries. Because we raise sociopathic people by treating our children sociopathically. And sociopathic people will push as far as they can. And in this fear place, I've been letting myself be pushed and pushed and pushed, and then blamed for, breaking out of it. So now there's a real shift to hold boundaries. But the reason I feel great is this is one of the first times that I'm not fearing that I'm going to die. Now, I've known, that rationally I'm not going to die. I've known that from, in an objective sense. But in a roundabout way, I haven't, because I get so panicked. It's so difficult to sleep. It's so difficult to find my equilibrium when I'm breaking the taboo of actually standing up for a boundary that's healthy, that rationally I could die from side effects of fear. Meaning when I'm that worked up, I don't drive as safely. When I'm that worked up, I can't close a sale as reliably. And so in a cult like ours, you can die in a car accident, you can die from lack of finances, you can, you can die of suicide and addiction from managing pain and anxiety. So there's lots of different threats. And, for the last 3 or 4 years, the threats have come from this panic of breaking this taboo to stand up and be, an adult holding boundaries in the face of people that don't want those boundaries held. It feels really great. And I'm really glad that I hung in there, pacing myself, doing it incrementally, but hanging in there and getting to a point where the new habit can be maintain and hold a boundary.